The 2x KO closed beta has been out on PC for a couple of days, and my Twitter timeline has been obsessed with this game. From the myriads of mix-up options that you have with handshake tags in training mode. Now, in case you weren't aware of what limit strikes are, or you've forgotten about them from the tutorial because 2xKO has so many different mechanics, let's go ahead and briefly remind everybody what a limit strike is. Some moves in the game are coded as like these big, huge, heavy moves that like launch the opponent maybe across the screen, and every character in the game has a couple of these. Using Yasuo as an example, this stance heavy of his, as well as stance 2 heavy, both have these coding to them. So if I do 2 of these in a combo, as a very simple example, you see that I get this little red notification under Ari that says limit strike. And there's a lot of little things that are happening underneath the hood here. You get a big increase in damage, you get like a big blowback effect on it as well, and it causes maybe like a knockdown or a wall bounce, but generally it also ends the combo for you. However, there's a lot of little things to consider when it comes to this technique. Now, I'm picking Yasuo for this video, not only because I'm currently learning the character, and I think he's a lot of fun, and though incredibly technical, it's also because not a lot of high-level players are routing into any of Yasuo's limit strike applications, and I think that it probably deserves a little bit of exploration just because there's a lot of things going for this particular mechanic, but it's very tricky for Yasuo to fit these in. Some other characters, like Echo in particular, I think, have an easier time routing into a limit strike to give them Okizeme, but for Yasuo, that's not really the case. Now, at some high levels of play with Yasuo, I typically see combo routings that look something like this. Now, there's a lot of reasons why people tend to gravitate to this style of combo for Yasuo. Does quite a bit of damage with the medium starter, does 531 damage here, at least in my showing casing of the combo. It almost builds an entire bar of meter for Yasuo. It's pretty stylishly looking, and at the very end of the combo, depending on what assist you have, it's pretty easy to get some really strong extensions off of it. Now let's go ahead and look at that route and what an assist extension might look like for Yasuo. I'm going to demonstrate this using a very common high-level pairing, which is going to be Yasuo and Vi. It's quite a bit more damage. With the extension, we add about roughly 100 more damage, capping out at 636 damage with a medium starter. Yasuo builds just shy over a bar, and Vi also gets involved and is able to build herself a little extra meter as well. The big thing to note, though, is going to be the vast disparity between my break gauge and the opponent's break gauge. We built up to roughly around like the K in break from 0%, whereas Ari was able to get pretty much like up through the A in break on her end of things, which is like a little more. So 4 letters for her and 1 letter for us after everything's said and done. So this is kind of like the situation when it comes to the resources that both sides are building after a combo like this for Yasuo. Now that we've looked at some of Yasuo's typical high-level routes, I want to compare those to what we get with some limit strike finishers instead. Routing for Yasuo is a little bit tricky because of the limit strikes that he gets. Basically, his best limit strike finisher is his stance heavy attack. But typically speaking, we're launching the opponent by using his stance down heavy attack, and that makes things a little bit tricky for him. For example, just as a basic demonstration, if we use his stance down heavy as a limit strike finisher, the opponent is left airborne where they can air tech, and that's not really a strong Okizeme situation for us to try and put the opponent into. So this is why that particular bit of combo routing is unattractive. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to actually routing into this limit strike for Yasuo without using an assist, opportunities are few and far in between, to the point where you have to dramatically shorten his combo routing. Again, it's the same situation where I can chase any of Ari's tech rolls with the double dash, and we almost build a full bar of meter, and we build about equal amounts of break gauge to Ari, which means that we're not falling behind in terms of our defensive resources in a situation where we're both trying to build up our break gauge. The only thing we're really missing from this combo routing is, of course, damage. It's about 40 less damage than the other route did, and of course, there's no really DHC potential from this one. You're doing this to build resources, not to build damage. But that's not really too big of a deal because even from a combo route like this, you can still pretty much two-touch off of this. Now let's go ahead and prove that you can actually still two-touch off of a combo route like this from light starters, even if you're shortening out Yasuo's combo and the damage with it. So we see that if you start off with two light starter combos, you are actually still able to two-touch going for that limit break finisher in the very first combo. So while it does less damage on its own, it doesn't really impact the situation when it comes to what you can get off of it following the next hit. Not to mention too that, Yasuo was able to level 3 in that sequence if it was necessary. So if case there was a higher health enemy that didn't die like Ari would have, not only would you have been able to kill with the double down follow-up from Vi, but Yasuo could have just done it by himself regardless of what fuse you were running. And of course, you got a little extra break from that first sequence, meaning that it's going to be available for you sooner, as opposed to going for combo routes that didn't have that in there before. So yeah, the individual first combo did less damage, but in the big picture of things, it didn't really make a difference in terms of our capabilities of two-touching the opponent. So let's go ahead and compare that sequencing to what we would usually see from two-touch high-level Yasuo Vi players. So it's a pretty straightforward two-touch sequence, but the big thing to note is the big disparity in terms of the Fury gauge itself. We barely ended with filling up from 0 to just about the full duration of the K, so a pretty small percentage when it comes to this combo, but we did only have to spend 1 bar of super, and we built 1 full bar for our assist as well as 2 full bars for our point character, so not bad. Earlier, I demonstrated a two-touch sequence that used Yasuo ending his first combo earlier, but what if we flip the order of which we're calling our assist? What if we use the assist to extend the first part of the combo to get us a more optimal limit strike combo, and then see if we can two-touch from there and compare that to what we did with the, current competitive two-touch, if you will. The main takeaway from comparing those two combo routes is that the two-touch process is all the same, but by opting for the limit strike in the very first combo that we saw with Yasuo, we were able to build ourselves a little bit more break gauge. Not only that, because we had the shorter combo, it meant that we avoided giving our opponent burst bonus, or break bonus rather, by having a long combo go on. And so because of that, by the time that we two-touched the Ari and Blitzcrank was brought in, Blitz had less break to work with, meaning that his Fury was going to be online a lot later. And I think it's going to be routing around manipulating the break gauge in the future that's going to be a big thing for the metagame going forward. After all, if you control the resources, you control the flow of the game, both offensively with your own super gauge, but defensively as well with the break gauge manipulation. And I think for the attacker to be able to make sure that they have access to their break, meaning they're able to have a better chance of making a quick comeback or escaping from the opponent's pressure or anything like that, it means that they're going to be able to sort of stem the ability for the opponent to make that comeback by, having that resource be lopsided as it currently is with how most players, I think, are routing their combos. Now, just like in the current competitive two-touch sequence, we were able to kill the opponent with spending only one of our DHC and basically built the same amount of meter. The big difference, though, is in the break gauge differential here. Blitzcrank is not as close to what he was building up before, whereas he still got a little bit of time before the Fury is activated, whereas we ended going into the middle of the E in break, almost doubling the break gauge that we, as the attacker, built in that earlier combo. Now, there are some other implications for using our assist in this matter, like we used it to extend a combo and guaranteed a full meter, which meant that, hey, we have a free opportunity to go for a parry or go for a DHC or anything like that earlier than we would have in the other combo. We just had more meter to play with immediately. However, it did cost us our assist, meaning that in our follow-up pressure after that combo, we don't have an assist to go for any sort of mix up potential or pressure extensions. It's all solo character pressure from there. So there is some give and take here, but I think this introduces a realm of choice in terms of our combo routing that we're not fully exploring. Maybe we go for a combo like I demonstrated using the Vi extension to get the limit strike for Yasuo, just to make sure that we get more break resources available to us earlier. Maybe when we break, we go for these combos just to make sure we can get break back sooner rather than later. That could be some potential here. So far by analysis, the biggest benefit of fitting in a limit strike is the fact that you're able to basically double the break gauge that you generate during your combos. So I want to test and see how much this extra bit of break gauge can actually matter in the course of a match. So what we're going to do next is basically compare the break gauge level that my Yasuo has after he does a full optimal combo versus a limit strike combo, and then has to endure a hit from the other Yasuo's full optimal combo. So let's go ahead and start with me doing the optimal first and then seeing where the break gauge is at. So we see in this example, if I do that same combo route and I don't do a limit strike in there, we do basically build our break gauge a little bit around like the full word break in there, but we're pretty far away from actually being able to use that resource. So now I'm interested to see how this compares if we do a limit strike in our combo and then we get put into this combo by the enemy Yasuo. While our own break gauge is just slightly higher, I do want to point out the sheer difference in terms of how much break gauge is between my Yasuo and the enemy Yasuo. We nearly have our full break gauge back after one of our combos and suffering from his long combo that did endure the break bonus benefit. And meanwhile, he never really had the chance to also have that same thing. So we're denying him break while we're also generating more break for ourselves. So I think this could have some really big metagame implications for 2xKO, where the first touch is going to be a little shorter, routing into a limit strike to regenerate break after we spend it. Then, we're getting more resources for ourselves while denying the opponent their resources. And then that second hit could be the big, long hit that's optimal for the cash out in order to fulfill that two-touch sequence. So I think it's worth doing it for Yasuo, a character that has a hard time routing into limit strike. And if it's worth it for him, it's worth doing it on everybody in the cast. That's pretty much all I wanted to say with Limit Strike and its utility in combo routing into XKO in the current version that we have. While I do think that Yasuo in particular is a character that struggles to take advantage of this mechanic, I do think that there is some benefit to exploring potential routes that could utilize this more and how that has a butterfly effect in terms of the outcome of a game. I think its ability to regenerate break is an underexplored resource at the moment, and I think that characters that can easily and readily use this without spending their assist are going to be able to reap some benefits that some other characters might not be able to. If there's a character that you think is able to take advantage of the Limit Strike system really well, do mention it in the comments below, and I'd be interested to see if this is something that begins to develop in the future as more and more tech is explored and more people try to structure their combo routing about taking advantage of the abilities and the resources that Limit Strike is able to give us when we're able to properly route into it. Anyways, I'll see if I come up with anything else for 2xKO.